SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
State Treasurer David McRae has put hundreds of millions back into the hands of Mississippi citizens, expanding the state's affordable college and career savings program and also returning record amounts of unclaimed money. Check out how Treasurer David McRae's office can help you, your business, or your organization. Treasury.ms.gov.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Mississippi.
Everything gonna be all right this morning.
Mornings with Richard Cross.
Oh, yeah.
Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Woo! Now, when I was a young boy, at the age of 5, my mother said I was gonna be.
Hello, good morning and welcome. Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk, Mississippi. It is great to be back with you on this Thursday morning. Thanks for joining us. Alongside Lance Talbert, I'm Richard Cross, and we want you to be part of the conversation this morning. You can do so on the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. 601-879-4395. The best teams know how to get even better. That's why C Spire constantly enhances their wireless, fiber internet, and business solutions for you. Visit cspire.com today. C Spire, inspired by you. You know, I've been out the last couple of days. I got a little bit of a concerning phone call while I was gone. We had some work that was being done in our yard, and it involved some digging. And I got a message that said, I think we just cut your fiber internet. Could you check it? And I said, well, I'm not there to check it, but if you did it where you think you did, you probably did. And within a day, a technician from C Spire was here, and they got the fiber spliced back together, and here we are, coming through loud and strong and proud this Thursday morning. Lance, what's up, my man?
Man, how's it going? I love the new coffee cup. Yeah, I saw the subliminal advertising there as you came in.
No. That is not advertising. They do not need,
they don't need it, huh?
advertising at the Augusta National Golf Club.
No, that's a beauty, though, that cup. And I saw Borky yesterday. He was wearing a really nice little sweater vest-looking thing. Yeah. It's Masters season. Did you have a good time over there?
So Borky went last year, and it was the first time in like 20 or 25. I think he had gone as a kid, younger, a teenager, whatever. Had a blast. Had an absolute blast.
What was your favorite thing of your visit over there? What y'all got to do?
I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah.
I'm sure that not all of the members of Augusta are this way, but I witnessed something that I thought was really, really cool. Shortly after we got there yesterday, kind of got some chairs set up. Yesterday was par 3 day. So we set up our chairs on the par 3 course, and that's just such a neat, different than the golf track. It's amazing how that tournament can go from the most laid-back, genteel experience to the most pressure-packed tournament in the span of 18 hours, but that's what it does. So we had walked from the par 3 course over toward the clubhouse, which is next to the putting green, and number 1 tee box. You can see number 9 coming up, 18, kind of all of that is in the same general area. And I saw this lady grab a member who was wearing a green jacket. And she said, would you take a picture with my husband? And he said, yeah. And she goes, it's his 65th birthday, and it's his first time here. And then she yells at her. She's like, Steve, come here. Steve comes scampering back. He says, hey, what's up? She's like, I'm going to take a picture of you with him. And then the member, he's got family, I guess, standing. He goes, hey, let's get my son to take the picture. So son grabs the camera, and both husband and wife get in the picture. And the member is smiling, and he goes, why are you asking to take a picture with me? And she pipes out. She's doing the talking here. She goes, well, you're the first member we saw. I appreciate the honesty. And he asked him about, hey, what are you doing? Where have you been? And I said, oh, we just walked over. We went straight to Amen Corner, which if you're not familiar with that area is 11, 12, and 13. It's kind of down at the bottom of the property, way down the hill from the clubhouse. And it's where Rays Creek runs through, and so many traditionally significant things have happened there. And he says, she got me this for my 65th birthday, and the member said, well, have you been before? He goes, no, this is my first time. And like a tear welled up in the guy's eye. Now, you may think that's silly, but if you're a golf person, you get that. And I would submit, if you're not a golf person and you get there, you get kind of overwhelmed with the beauty of the whole place. And so this member goes, well, do you want to go inside the clubhouse? And Lance, it would have been as if you handed this man a Powerball ticket for the next drawing, tomorrow's drawing, Saturday's drawing, whatever it is, that already had the winning numbers, and he knew he was holding the ticket. It was as if he had died and gone to heaven. And I thought, man, that's cool. That's a favorite thing I saw the entire day yesterday.
Is the clubhouse is obviously off limits then for everyone but a member, so that is obviously some type of high honor to get. And then the first one you meet walking in the door, basically into the tournament, you get to take a picture with him. He's like, "Hey man, come on to check it out." That would be pretty cool. I think I would have probably fainted, and then somebody had to throw cold beer on me or something. Say, "Wake it up, boy! Come on, you got to get into the clubhouse."
It was really neat. I mean, it's a great people watching place. I mean, all shapes, all sizes, all colors, all creeds, all fashion, you name it, it was there. You know, from the group of four guys who were all matching, wearing the exact same shirt. Like, why was that a good idea? But, you know, I guess that's what they do on their buddy's golf trip. And so they said, hey, we're going on a buddy's golf trip to Augusta. Let's do it.
Everybody got the same shirt, huh?
Yeah, the guy that's wearing logos from seven different golf courses so he can show how important he is and how many cool golf courses he's played, to the lady that's got a hat and is dressed to the nines and everything in between. It was really, really cool.
I remember the day when it was all hats. Like my grandfather had every hat with a rope on it from every course that he ever played.
Wow. And
he had he loved them. And the old timers, they'd wear them kind of cocked off, never really pull them down. And he had every one of them. I mean, and all of them had the old, the rope on it. And, and they were just so unique.
So I'm glad. I bet you have not thought about this.
I know what the rope's for. I've done it.
Well, you probably do. But have you thought about Donald Trump as a fashion icon?
I mean, it seems that he's taken on that mantra a bit.
But to me, the rope hat was dead.
Dead as a doornail, yeah.
Prior to Donald Trump running for president the very first time, the rope hat, rest its soul, had been buried not 6 feet under, but 60 feet under. You couldn't find one anywhere except on Donald Trump's head.
And they're everywhere. My nephew's wearing them, and he's
every
16.
Golf course in America has a rope hat with its logo on it.
That's the way it used to be back in the good old days. You didn't play there if you didn't have the rope hat.
Yeah.
So, he had hundreds of them, too, because, over 50 years of traveling and playing. I mean, he had them from Mexico, and he'd wear them. He didn't even know which one he had on half the time, but he had them strewn everywhere.
That's awesome.
And I love those things, man. But, for 40 years, you didn't see them. And then all of a sudden, they're back, baby. They're back. And it is because of Donald Trump. And
Ocean Springs.
every brand has them now, too. Every brand.
Yeah. Ocean Springs are mainly sunny today. High of 77, winds out of the west-southwest 10 to 15 miles per hour. Hattiesburg, you're going to be sunny with a high of 83, 5 to 10 out of the west. That's going to be a nice day in the hub city. Clarksdale, partly cloudy, stray thunderstorm, possibly severe. Just heads up on that. High around 80. Winds out of the west 10 to 15. Macon, you're coming in with mostly sunny skies today and a high of 81 degrees. Outstanding. C-Spire text line 601-879-4395. What's up, Richard, Lance? Hope you guys are good. I sure do miss Gallo, but you guys have a great thing going. Thank you. We miss Gallo as well. It's kind of you to say this morning. Crosby says, good morning. I'm no expert, but I am an old Army radio man, and I think your radio frequency up there in the Delta needs checked out. You're floating.
It has some issues at times. Yeah, they've been working on it.
I will tell you that the rash of storms that we have had over the last few weeks have played havoc with transmitters and lines and tubes and electrical connections, and we promise you that our engineering team is doing everything they can to get it all back as quickly as we possibly can, and we appreciate your patience. Jeff in Grenada says the rope hat needs to be re-dead along with the flat bill. Flat bill's better on some than it is on others. That look doesn't work for everybody. Were you a big roll your bill guy when you played baseball, or were you a flat bill?
I mean, I'd roll that thing, I would put it in my pocket.
There you go.
The Brad Henderson method, you know.
There you go. Just getting started with you. It's Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk, Mississippi. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday morning, the 10th of April.
Where you're from, Abbeville, Batesville, DeIberville, or any other ville in the SIP. You're starting your day off right. Mornings with Richard Cross. Super Talk, Mississippi.
Lance, apparently you provided a cliffhanger. Ray from Forest, you say you know what the rope is for on a rope hat, but then you don't ever tell the rest of us what the purpose is.
Yeah, you know, I learned this the old-fashioned way by watching some boating. Yeah, I don't remember what I was doing, but I was watching like some boating thing. And some older guy had the hat, and the kid was playing around with it, and he was trying to put it under his chin and everything. The old-timer said, no, that's not what that's for. You take the rope and you pull it up on top of your head so that the rope holds the hat down if you're out boating. So originally those were boating hats, and the rope was significant to boating. And that rope,
I think the kid was onto something. I think you'd take the rope all the way around and then pop that bad boy under your chin to really hold the hat in place if you're boating.
That's what he was trying to do, and the old timer was like, no, that's not what that's for. And he pulled it up over his head, and the kid was like, wow. And it does. It holds it down. I mean, it's what it's for. So, yeah, I learned that the old-fashioned way, a little research.
Good to be back with you this morning. A couple of birthdays and some items that have happened on this day historically to pass along to you just to make you feel a little smarter or know a little bit more as you go throughout your day. Joseph Pulitzer was born on this day in 1847. The Hungarian-American publisher worked at both the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the New York World, and Democrat politician whose bequest founded the Columbia School of Journalism. I'm not even sure he would be proud of what that has become. Yes. And ultimately the Pulitzer Prize, born in Mako, Kingdom of Hungary, 1847. Harry Morgan.
Yeah, there's you a good one. Dragnet and MASH. And
born in 1915. Yes, we're talking about Colonel Sherman Potter. Star of December Bride, MASH, Dragnet, played Bill Gannon in Dragnet, born in Detroit, Michigan. And how about this guy? 1936, April 10th, 1936, a gift that would give for an entire lifetime. American Pro Football Hall of Fame coach, won a Super Bowl in 1976 with the Oakland Raiders, and Hall of Fame sports broadcaster, 16-time Emmy winner. He worked at CBS, Fox, ABC, and NBC, and perhaps is most known for his video game. Yes, we are talking about the great John Madden. Born in Austin, Minnesota.
Austin, Minnesota.
Pull out one of those 6-leg turkeys or 8-leg turkeys and hand out those turkey legs for the players of the game on
the turducken. Oh my God, man! I mean,
on Thanksgiving Day,
the invention of the turducken. Well, and another big guy for you here. Yeah, one I can't believe you skipped over him, but the baddest big guy on the planet, Steven Seagal, 73 years old today.
It's a rough picture of Steven Seagal.
Man. He gets bigger, you know. But
he is a larger dude than the last time I remember seeing him.
He's the prototype of do less. No, you're doing too much, you know. Do less. I mean,
one of the worst financial decisions of all time, right here. On this day in 1849, the safety pin was patented by Walter Hunt in New York City. Shortly thereafter, he sold the rights to that patent for $400.
It must needed some money.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, ultimately you do what you have to do when you have to do it to get by. Maybe he just didn't think it was going to be a long-term play. I mean, is there a safety pin sitting somewhere on the desk at which you're sitting right now? I guarantee you there's one in my office somewhere. And then there's a 10 of them somewhere. And, like, everywhere. I'm curious. What did I say, $400 in 1859? $400 in 1859.
Yeah, I want to know what the most unique use of a safety pin someone's come up with out there. Like, what's the one thing that you go, oh, yeah, somebody showed me that. I never would have thought of that. I mean, because you realize, safety pin, I've used them for God knows what. Way beyond the destined purpose, I can assure you.
Yeah.
So utilitarian.
$15,309 is what it would be in today. So it was a small. It was.
You can't even buy a cheap car with that.
No, and $400 was insignificant. $15,000 is significant, but for an invention that changed the course of the world. You feel like that guy walked away from generational riches.
Yeah, and it probably wouldn't have been called the safety pin, too, if he'd have held on to it. If he'd have invented it and called like the Johnson pin or whatever.
Yeah, maybe so. Or the Hunt pin.
That's what I'm saying, the Hunt pin.
A couple of others quick ones. This day, 1912, the RMS Titanic set sail from Southampton for her maiden and final voyage.
Didn't last
Got some
long.
interesting conspiracy theories floating around about the old Titanic that I've seen online. I'll save those for another day.
Yeah, well,
this day in
made it 5 days.
1913?
Way to make it 5 days. That's a rough start there.
Yeah. This day in 1913, the New York Highlanders play their first Major League Baseball game as the New York Yankees had lost to the Washington Senators 2-1 at Griffith Stadium. President Woodrow Wilson was there to throw out the first pitch. This day in 1947, Jackie Robinson became the first black player of the 20th century to sign an MLB contract. He did it with Brooklyn general manager Branch Rickey, announced the Dodgers had bought Robinson's contract from Montreal, the Montreal Royals at the time. And finally, Lance, pretty good induction class into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2014. It was the 29th Rock and Roll Hall of Fame class of inductees. Listen to this list. Peter Gabriel.
Oh, love Peter Gabriel.
Hall & Oates.
There you go.
Kiss.
Ooh.
Nirvana.
Yeah.
But specifically 3 members of Nirvana, including Dave Grohl, when he was a drummer for Nirvana, long before the Foo Fighter days.
He was a
Linda
beast.
Ronstadt, Cat Stevens, the E Street Band,
wow.
The ones that played with the Boss, Brian Epstein, Andrew Loog Oldham. I don't know who he is.
I don't know those last two, but it sure is a all-star cast there.
Epstein was he was a producer guy.
Okay. Well, that's good stuff there. I mean, that's a really good list of them.
Pretty darn good.
Yeah, man. Well, you had Sam Kinison passed away on this day, too, if you were a big fan of Sam, 1992. And then Paul McCartney, you're talking about music. This is the day that the Beatles died. Officially announced the split of the Beatles on this day in 1970. Pretty significant moment.
You saw how he announced it, didn't you?
I don't
It was in a
remember.
press release that included the announcement of his solo album.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, I'd like to tell everybody, John Lennon, the record, coming to you now. Buy it at your local stores. Oh, by the way, the Beatles broke up.
Yeah, and there's a grand conspiracy about Paul McCartney too.
Is there?
Great Beatles fans out there, some say it's not Paul McCartney, it's a doppelganger, like he died in a car wreck. And then they stood this guy up and made him, Paul McCartney. So it's an interesting, conspiracy theory if you're into those things. I like reading, so I'll read about anything. But it actually has roots. It's been around for a while.
National Weather Service confirmed 14 Mississippi tornadoes from April 2nd through the 6th. We know that was a stormy week. Numbers continue to come in after all of that severe weather. 14 tornadoes touched down between April 2nd and April 6th. 2 EF3s. Those were in Tate and Marshall counties. 5 EF2 tornadoes. 6 EF1s and 1 EF0. Mississippi Emergency Management Agency has recorded damage in 22 counties. Damage reports so far include 414 homes, 20 farms, and 14 businesses. Of the homes that were affected, 54 of them were destroyed. 68 more sustained major damage. Severe storms and tornadoes resulted in 1 life lost in Jasper County, 7 others injured in the storms as well. And if you were one of those who was fortunate not to be affected by the severe storms of early this month, try to remember those that were. And if there's a way that you can offer a helping hand, I mean, we've talked about this before. It's just so stinking easy to be sad for somebody, be concerned for somebody, and then you just move on. Right, because you're like, you still got to go to work. You still got to do stuff with the kids. You still got to pay bills. You got responsibilities with your church, whatever it is. You just move on to the next thing. And unfortunately, those people's lives, they don't just get to move on because they're dealing with limbs and roofs and trying to rebuild houses and trying to repair farms and all of those things. So just whether it's sparing a minute for a quick prayer or actually reaching out a helping hand to offer, I'm sure it would mean a lot to those folks. Big stock market rally yesterday. And yes, we will talk more about tariffs and rhetoric and strategies and China, or China, if you prefer. All that coming up this morning. U.S. stocks roared to one of their best days in history on a euphoric Wall Street yesterday after President Donald Trump said he would back off on most of his tariffs temporarily, as investors had been desperately hoping he would. S&P 500 jumped 9.5% yesterday, an amount that would count as a good year in the market. You get 8%, everybody's happy. Anything above that, really good. You get to double digits, really good. 9.5% yesterday. Of course, it had lost a bunch before that. Quick timeout. We got sports headlines. We got a whole lot more. Back right after this. Mornings with Richard Cross.
My mind's home loving you. All right, now to the important stuff.
Your VIP pass to hear what the most influential Mississippians are talking about.
This is very important.
Huge news. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Hey, Thursday morning. Weekend just around the corner. Close enough to be able to see it if you peer down the way just a little bit. Alongside Lance Talbert, I'm Richard Cross. This is Mornings with Richard Cross. We are glad to be with you. Mentioned the stock market rallied yesterday, 9.5% jump. This on news from Donald Trump. I have authorized a 90-day pause in the tariffs. Scott Bessent did later clarify the 10% tariff on all global markets is staying in place. Like, that's not going anywhere. But the whole big 75% tariff that was happening on a whole bunch of countries, we're going to press pause. And you know why? Because most of those countries have said, we want to talk to you. We want to work this out. Let's come to an agreement. Okay. Yes, there is an imbalance in the trade relationship between the United States and us, whoever us may be, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Mexico, Canada, whatever. All those countries, with the exception of one, That is China. And China was not a small exception. China is a massive exception. Trump saying that the tariffs are going up again. You remember when you woke up yesterday, it was 104% on China. Now it's 125% on China. Which means China's going to take theirs from, 84% to 92%? Just back and forth we go, back and forth we go. Here is a summary. You're not going to get this kind of breakdown. You're not going to get this kind of clarity just anywhere. I feel certain about this. This is what you need to know about the tariffs, about the trade war. 97.235% of the people who are talking about, tweeting about, explaining, rationalizing, and spinning the conversation about tariffs don't know what the heck they're talking about. They don't really understand global markets. They don't really understand what imbalance means. They don't really understand trade deficits. They certainly don't understand the bond market, the inverse relationship between the 10-year Treasury and interest rates on borrowing money on things like houses and cars and all that good stuff. And you know what? I'm going to put myself in that category. Lance has a better grasp of it. He worked in the finance business for get my hands on, trying to understand it, asking questions of people in the financial industry. But a lot of the people that are telling you this is what's happening, this is why you should be mad, don't know what the heck they're talking about. And so I would submit this to you. We talked earlier about me being in Augusta. Augusta is one of the great places, the Augusta National Golf Club for the Masters yesterday for the practice round. It is one of the few places that you will go where there is more than one person in a single place, where there are no telephones. There's some landlines in case you have an emergency and you need to make a phone call. You can go into a little private booth and use a landline phone and call out. No cell phones. They allowed digital cameras for the practice rounds, not during the tournament rounds. Nobody had a phone. And you know what? If you had not had a phone or a computer or a television available to you for the last week and a half, like just didn't have one, period, and you came back and you found out all of this stuff had happened in the markets, do you know how different your life would be today than it was 10 days ago? The answer is not at all. Nothing would have changed. Nothing changed. Oh, but my 401k. Did you try to pull the money out of your 401k? Did you try to sell all the stocks that plummeted for a week? If you didn't, you didn't lose anything. It's just on paper. The only way you lost is if you were like, today is the day I'm cashing in my 401k and taking out every single dollar because I want to do something else with it. Oh, wait, my 401k just dropped 27%. I lost 27% of everything I've saved. Well, that was dumb. You shouldn't have done that. Otherwise, you didn't lose anything, and you got almost all of it back yesterday. And Lance pointed this out to me during the break just a second ago. Oh, by the way, you know where the market is right now? Exactly where it was a year ago today. Exactly where it was at a year ago today, and within shouting distance of all-time high territory. So, calm down.
Well, I mean, you'll see the volume over the last week has been a great deal higher than you've seen over the last year or two. So you had a lot of people, a lot of computers hitting the sell button, and they'll hit the buy button just as quick.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, the number of stories contradicting each other that I've read about what the 10-year Treasury is doing And it is either the saving grace of America in perpetuity or the signal of a crashing market and immediate recession. From seemingly smart people on both sides.
I'll say one thing I learned by a lot of research in the debt markets, worked in a great deal in the bond markets. Mm-hmm. Where you really get worried is when your yield curve inverts. And that means long-term interest rates are lower than short-term interest rates. Okay? So you're getting paid more to own the 2-year or the 5-year or the 10-year than you are the 20 or the 30. Which is obviously time is risk, right? Holding something a long period of time, you should get paid more to hold the 30-year than you should be paid to hold the 5-year. There's more risk, right? 25 more years. So when that changes, when you see short-term interest rates flip around and they're paying you more than long-term rates, that's when you really have to start paying attention to a potential slowdown or something that is in the market that shouldn't be happening. So it's hard to figure out what it may be. We saw that happen back in 2007. Going into the 2008 crash, you knew something was up, didn't quite know what it was. But if you pay attention to that yield curve, debt is a lot of times a great indicator of what's to come. And we floated trillions of this stuff. So I would just say pay attention to some of those little nuances. They do make a difference. And also block trades. You know, the big boys out there control, 98% of the market.
Probably so.
Gerard and I were kind of laughing about that the other day. The retail investor, 3%. So when we freak out, it doesn't really impact the market much.
No.
But when the big boys start selling stuff, it moves it quickly. And they can move it quickly in the other direction by buying.
When they start buying.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
So trying to time that is very, very difficult.
Which is why they say it's a long-term play. Don't try to time the market. It all works out. Historically, the stock market returns almost 10% a year, maybe a touch lower than that. Some people try to convince you it's 12%. Others try to convince you it's 8%. Pretty solid return on your investment, though, if you stick with it for a long period of time. Quickly, a few sports headlines. Ole Miss yesterday set a school record with 29 runs. 29 runs on 23 hits. In a 7-inning run rule victory over in-state foe Alcorn State. Ole Miss moved to 26-7 on the year. Alcorn State fell to 4-25. Luke Hill was 3 for 3 with 5 runs scored. Judd Utermark was 2 for 2 with 3 runs scored, 4 runs driven in, added another home run to his to his resume. Isaac Humphrey was 4 for 5 with 4 runs scored and 5 driven in. Campbell Smithwick had a couple of doubles, 3 for 4 with 4 runs driven in and 3 runs scored. Luke Chang hit 2 home runs. He was 2 for 5 with 5 runs batted in yesterday. Owen Pano went 4 for 5, drove in a run, scored a couple as well. Pretty good day for the old batting average yesterday in Oxford. And it sets up a big weekend. Ole Miss has won 2 in the midweek. This weekend it's number 5 Tennessee and number 6 Ole Miss. Friday at 6:30, Saturday at 4, Sunday at 2. Mississippi State tries to keep the momentum going this weekend after a series win at home last weekend. They got a tough task. Headed to Tuscaloosa to take on the Crimson Tide of Alabama. Games at 6 on Friday, 2 on Saturday, and 1 on Sunday. Southern Miss trying to bounce back after losing 3 of their last 4. Lost a series on the road to Marshall last weekend. Lost their midweek game to Alabama. Now they're headed to San Marcos, Texas for a 3-game series with Texas State. 6 o'clock Friday, 2:30 Saturday, 11 o'clock on Sunday. Bummer news for Mississippi State basketball fans. Forward Keyshawn Murphy has entered the transfer portal. The announcement comes just over a week after the Bulldogs sophomore and Howell Trophy winning guard Josh Hubbard declared for the NBA draft, but retained his college eligibility. Murphy had a good season, nearly 12 points and 7 rebounds per game. First round coverage of the Masters begins today. Ceremonial tee shots coming up from Gary Player, Jack Nicklaus, Tom Watson. Scotty Scheffler is the odds-on favorite to win. He is the reigning champ. Rory McIlroy, second best odds to win the tournament, looking to become the 6th ever to win the career Grand Slam. And keep an eye out for Mississippian Davis Riley, making his first stroll around the fabled grounds of Augusta, qualified for the 2025 Masters with his win last year. Lottery coming up next.
Wake up. Get up and start your day right with Mornings with Richard Cross here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
You hear that music and you know what that means. Time for us to take a look at the updates from the Mississippi Lottery. Find them online at mslottery.com. mslottery.com. There was no jackpot winner for Lotto America. The estimated jackpot for Saturday night's drawing, $28,870,000. Estimated cash value closing in on $14 million. Numbers from Wednesday, 12, 19, 30, 42, 46. The star ball was 7. The all-star bonus multiplier was 2. No jackpot winner on Wednesday for Powerball. The estimated jackpot for Saturday, $82 million. It's starting to climb. Estimated cash value, $39.6 million. Numbers from Wednesday, April 9th, 429. 37, 55, 67. The Powerball was 10. The Power Play multiplier was 4.
Well, double play numbers from Wednesday, April the 9th, 2, 15, 44, 60, and 68. You had a Powerball of 23 on that. And then Mega Millions, no jackpot winner. Estimated jackpot for Friday, April the 11th, $72 million. Estimated cash value on that, $34.3 million. The Tuesday drawing numbers, 10, 16, 50, 60, and 61 with a Mega Ball of 17.
And we've got all the new stuff in place now for Mega Millions, right? Went into effect on Saturday. Mm-hmm. The $5 ticket, the bigger grand prizes, faster growing jackpots, all of that stuff. No winner for Mississippi Match 5, $113,000 jackpot for tonight. Numbers 3, 12, 25, 26, 30.
Well, Cash 3 Wednesday midday numbers 137. The evening drawing 047. Cash 4 $5,000 midday numbers 7274. Evening 8126. Fireball of 4 and a cash pop of 15 in the midday. The evening Fireball 3, cash pop of 13.
The drawing held yesterday in Mississippi, the Mississippi Lottery's Second Chance promotion awarded a total of $1,025,000 to winners who entered non-winning scratch-off tickets into the Second Chance program. Covered 10 eligible scratch-off games. 2 of the top prizes, each worth $200,000, went to players from Leakesville and Golden. The Leakesville ticket was a Power 10X scratch-off game purchased at Golden Nugget Casino in Biloxi. The Golden ticket came from a Jumbo Bucks game at Express Mart in Belmont. 5 other players received $100,000 prizes from Ocean Springs, Gaucher, Loosedale, Grenada, and Biloxi. Each player playing a different $5 scratch-off. Additionally, you had a Plantersville player who won $75,000. A Purvis player won $30,000. Another Biloxi player took home $20,000. All winners will be notified by certified mail, and it's a reminder that you can continue to enter eligible non-winning tickets into the Second Chance program online at mslottery.com/second-chance. And then one more update from the lottery. The first winner of the 2025 NASCAR Powerball playoff will be announced later today. Somebody's taking home $10,000 plus a $5,000 early bird bonus. It's the start of the annual promotion featuring 7 qualifying races and 15 total Mississippi winners. They will advance to the National NASCAR Powerball playoff for a shot at the $1 million grand prize. West Point native Stephanie Walker won the $1 million prize in 2023, so just a couple of years ago. You could be next. All right. You got some Cash 4 winners?
I sure do. There's a few of them in here. An Aberdeen woman won $1,200 on a ticket from Texaco's Jumbos in Columbus. A Jackson woman won $1,350 on a ticket from the Citgo in Jackson. A Canton man, $2,500 richer. Purchased that at School Street Valero in Ridgeland. A Clarksdale woman, $2,500 in the pocket on a ticket from Double Quick 103 in Clarksdale. A Jackson woman, $3,303 on a ticket from the Sunrise in Jackson. And a Jackson man won $3,303 on a ticket from Sunrise in Jackson. Wonder if there was like a husband and wife that walked in together.
I don't know. That's an oddly specific winning amount for both of them. Here's an oddly specific amount: $97,738.89.
Yeah,
that's how much a West Point man won on a ticket from Walmart Superstore in Columbus. That was a Match 5 ticket. $10 extreme payday. Thanks for passing through, Mr. McClure, Illinois man. He won $2,500 from the C-Store in Gluckstadt. And then a couple other winners. Byhalia man, $2,000 on a ticket from On the Square Market in Holly Springs. And a Loosedale man won $2,000 on a ticket from Greer's Market in Hurley. That update brought to you by the Mississippi Lottery. Grant Callen is going to join us in the 7 o'clock hour, about half an hour from right now. He's the founder and CEO of Empower Mississippi. Look forward to conversation with Grant in the second half of the 7 o'clock hour. Then former Mississippi Congressman Gregg Harper, represented the 3rd District in the state of Mississippi, will join us. We'll talk with him about tariffs and the strategy of the Trump administration. What he sees. I would think that Congressman Harper would be free to talk openly, being that he's no longer serving in Washington, D.C., nothing that he's got to protect. What's his perspective on this? Look forward to that as well. Mornings with Richard Cross, 7 o'clock hour next. Right now, it's the news.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, and callers on this show are not the opinions of TeleSouth Communications, its management, or advertisers.
It's happening. You're waking up to what's happening. Mornings with Richard Cross. Right now on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Well, my daddy never wrote in the old famous country song. Papa never stayed out raising hell with the Haggard Jones. But he raised prayer.
This hour of Mornings with Richard Cross brought to you by MWG Employer Services. Running a business is tough. And if you're struggling with HR, benefits, and payroll, you are not alone. That's where MWG Employer Services comes in. They can provide a full range of employer services solutions. Custom plan that fits you. Give them a call, 601-206-7966. 601-206-7966, or visit them online at mwgemployerservices.com. Alongside Lance Tolbert, I'm Richard Cross. Glad to be with you. C-Spire text line is open, 601-879-4395. Give your business the edge. How do you do that? Well, you get C-Spire Fiber for your business. If you're looking for game-changing technology, you need C-Spire on your team. 5G wireless, fiber home internet, business IT solutions built as tough as you and your team. Learn more at cspire.com. C-Spire, inspired by you. I guess this is like a carryover from afternoon. Who's the guest speaker this morning? Ha ha. Good to have you back, Richard. Yeah, good to be back.
Boom, boom.
One of the longest running, not so funny bits that's out there.
Never gets old, though, does it?
Oh, it depends on who you ask. Might get a little old. Just messing with you. Just messing with you. Really interesting thread. Now, this is let me ask you this, Lance. Is this something that you guys talked about or referenced while I was away? This Twitter thread from Tanvi Ratna?
I don't think so.
Okay. So, it's a little old. It's a little long. But I think it serves a purpose. And it lays out potentially what this strategy is that Donald Trump's administration is doing. But then, because it's a little old where we are addressing this, we actually get a couple of follow-up posts from her over the last couple of days that kind of give us an update on the original thread. I will try to shorten this as opposed to just reading it word for word because it's a lot. But Tanvi Ratna posits this. Trump's new tariffs aren't a trade tweak. They're the first move in a full-spectrum reset. Will Cain talked about this on his show yesterday. That, hey, if you think this is just chaos and there's no plan, you're wrong. You may not like the plan. You may think it's too big of a risk. Lance, tell me if you disagree with this. If you're not paying attention, you are missing the early stages of the United States versus China. And the rest of the world declaring either I'm with the United States or I'm with China.
I think that's fair. I also, it's going to change. When you have 75 countries that have kind of come to the line and said, hey, yeah, we like this idea of free trade or working on a level playing field.
It's one thing when you're talking about trade. It's another thing when you're talking about missiles.
That's right. Yeah. And so I think, to me, getting some inertia behind this is one thing. The other is, I think a lot of people may be a little worried about thinking Trump may be wishy-washy, pausing this, pulling that, pausing this, pulling. But what it's done is it showed you who's really with you and who's against you. I think there was a great article in Market Watch earlier today with Bill Ackman, Nouriel Roubini, and others, very smart people. And you don't hear anything saying that tariffs are bad. What you're saying is how you go about working this equation is really the key. Yeah. Roubini says, hey, Trump had to blink because the markets pushed him to do that. If you look at yields, Ackman, on the other hand, says, hey, this is a calculated risk. In order to find out who your friends are, you got to put your toe in the deep end. And what you've done is you've either scared people or either you've gotten people to the table that you needed to find out who's with you and who's against you. So to your point, yes.
Yeah, I think
that's more of what kind of game you're playing than some kind of long-term tariff deal. It's, hey, who is going to work with us and who's going to work against us? And we need to know who that is. And then Trump says, okay, now let me pause this. Now we know.
There's a flexibility. I mean, you said a second ago Trump being wishy-washy. You can describe it that way if you want to. But one of the things that Will Cain said, Will Cain shows on Fox and his podcast and whatever, is Trump never defines what a win is so that he can claim one at any time or multiple times along the way. There's a flexibility. There's an elasticity. They tried to nail Trump down on yesterday. Just a little bit of like, hey, you said you weren't going to pause these tariffs, and now you're pausing the tariffs. Why are you going back on what you said? He's like, well, you got to be flexible.
And the art of a great
If Trump had said to the world a week ago, yeah, we might get to a spot where we pause these tariffs, you lose the ability to pause the tariffs as a negotiating tactic. This is, riding along yesterday, we were talking and had a wise friend that said, it's a high-stakes game of poker. It's a really, really high-stakes game of poker. I said, is it poker or chicken? And he just kind of laughed and said, maybe.
All right, so mix of both on it.
Yeah, I think there's some of both. I really do. It feels, because of where we are and how local it is to us, like there's more at stake for the United States. But most experts would tell you that it's actually China's economy where the stakes are higher than there are with us right now. And here's the thing. Xi Jinping, he's dealing with a different dude. Ain't dealing with Obama. Ain't dealing with George W. Sure ain't dealing with Biden or whoever was holding the strings of the puppet that was Biden.
Well, I mean, you got to remember Bush.
He's dealing with a dude right now.
Bush's dad was really one of the ones that opened up China for the modern era of growth that we've seen, and where America was a huge exporter of goods around that time when Bush won, to where you are today, where China is really the leader of exports. So part of that is the appetite for their exports. If you can show a decrease in appetite, then of course it puts pressure on China a bit. Remember, they hold a good bit of our debt too, so it's not as easy as just saying, hey, let's get fair trade. There are complications there when one country holds a chunk of your debt, but they have a lot less than they used to. They've diversified away, so it's not as big of a hit if you got to deal with them today as, say, 10 years ago.
Thomas in Greenwood.
I love Thomas. He's going to give you the contrarian. He's missed you.
Thomas, it's been a week, and I hadn't taken a swing at you, so you better buckle up because I'm about to swing back hard. And what are we negotiating towards? I don't mind cheap Chinese imports that made my money go further. Yeah, that's the thing, Thomas. In every single message you send us, you know what it's about? It's about you. And it's only about you, Thomas. It's about what's good for you. It's all you ever care about. Well, if we do that, well, I can do it this way. Well, my rights here. Well, my money here. Well, why aren't you subsidizing me? It's always about you. It's never about the United States, Thomas. It's never about the shrinking or dead middle class that no longer exists. You want to know what we're negotiating toward? That's what we're negotiating toward. There are two classes of people in the United States these days. They're the extremely wealthy, and there are the poor. The United States of America was built on a thriving middle class. The 3-bedroom, 2-bath, husband, wife, 2.3 kids, and a dog, where you pay off a house and you save a little money and you pay off a car over 4 years. And maybe you send your kids to college, or maybe you set them up to get started on a job. However you define the middle class today, I don't know what that income number is. Probably the what? 50 to, if you're talking about a household income, middle class is probably what? 60 to 125, 130, 140? I don't know how you define that. It is really, really hard to do the things that we just talked about a second ago on that income. And that's what Donald Trump is pushing toward. He's like, the United States needs the middle class strong. We're back right after this.
Waking up Mississippi. From South Haven to Scuba, it's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
You know what I love about Thomas the most is the amount of mental bandwidth he has for passionate topics. See, like here's the example I would use. I love college football, and I consume a ton of college football and work in the college football space. I don't have enough bandwidth to also love and consume a lot of pro football, so I pick. But in this example, not only does Thomas have the bandwidth to love and consume college football and pro football, he also takes in Australian rules football, rugby, soccer because it's football, and probably a couple of other balls. And is passionate about like he's got fantasy teams in every single one of those leagues. Like every single political issue we talk about, Thomas doesn't just have an opinion. He has a passionate, draw a line in the sand stance on everything. I'm going to be honest. Kind of respect that.
Yes, it's impressive.
I don't know how you have the capacity to do it. I really don't. And yet, you do. Either that or you're the greatest troll and contrarian that's ever lived. Somebody sent us a message.
It's a mix of both. Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody says, I work I don't know if this is the same Thomas or not, and I'm not going to throw a last name out there and dox him. Says, I work with Thomas at a certain company. He is borderline genius. Maybe so. All right, so let's go back to where this started, because I got a grand total of 1 in the series of tweets. Tammy Ratna, Trump's new tariffs aren't a trade tweak. They're the first move in a full spectrum reset. Here's what you got to know first. In 2025, this year, $9.2 trillion of our $37 trillion debt matures this year. Inflation is lingering. Alliances are shifting. She writes that one announcement just set a dozen wheels in motion. She said, here's what's happening and why it matters. By the way, this was on April 2nd. It was 8 days ago. So think about much of what she writes here in the context of not knowing 8 days ago what you know today. Start with the debt. $9.2 trillion must be refinanced. If rolled into 10-year bonds, every 1 basis point drop, that's 0.01%, every 1 basis point drop in rates saves approximately $1 billion a year. So, if you talk about a 0.5 percentage point interest rate drop, then you're talking about saving the United States $500 billion over the course of a decade. Lower yields, free up fiscal room. Without them, core spending gets crowded out. How do you push the yields down? With sticky inflation and a cautious Fed. Manufacturer uncertainty. Sweep in with tariffs, spook the markets, trigger risk off. Money exits stocks, and it floods into long-term treasuries. A deliberate detox to cool the economy and cut refinancing costs. Now, parenthetically, again, remember what we know now that we didn't know a week ago when she wrote this. And one thing that we know now, it's not that people are buying treasuries. That was the case for a few days. But over the last couple of days, in the overnight hours, with global markets at work, you have seen selling of treasuries, which perhaps is a bit of a fly in the ointment or a kink in the chain or throws a monkey in the wrench. You get the idea. Cheap refinancing isn't enough on its own. Even at lower rates, the debt remains enormous. Here comes Doge, where they say they are cutting $4 billion a day. At that pace, they would have shaved off $1 trillion by the end of September of 2025, if not sooner. Parenthetically, if defense spending goes up to some of what Trump has said it might go up to, I don't know if there's an offset at all. Tariffs come in as a trigger for domestic industrial revival. You're picking up money through tariffs. American factories can't scale overnight. That's a problem. So in the short term, consumers will face higher prices. The administration knows this. That's why they are front-loading the plan now, betting that by 2026, what's 2026? Midterms, the benefits will be visible. In the meantime, they're offering near-term relief. Tax cuts have been floated to help offset the cost burden on households. Tariffs expected to bring in about $700 million in revenue in the first year, which is not a huge number, but one of the things, I've talked about this with some buddies, Lance. Keep hearing this. Not a significant amount of money. Not a significant enough amount of money. Not enough money on its own. But $500 billion here and $700 billion there and $4 billion here and $50 million there. When you add it all up, it becomes a significant amount of money.
Well, and GDP is what we're looking at, right? I mean, you increase GDP, everything else looks healthier. So what is GDP? We throw that word around and that term around a lot, but what does it mean? It's the gross domestic product, obviously. And how do you get to that calculation? GDP equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Okay, let's tell you what that consumption is C, investment is I, government spending is G. The one that we're really working on right here is X minus M. That's net exports, all right? That's the trade imbalance. Part of that is your GDP, folks. So if you balance trade more, your GDP all of a sudden looks a lot healthier. Borrowing costs go down. Everything is a trickle-down effect from GDP in many cases. You're hoping that mortgage rates are healthy, that you have a robust buying season in the housing market, which really is huge if you haven't paid attention in America. You know, that's a big deal. So, you know, putting the footing where government spending, which is G, you reduce that as much as you can, or at least allocate the money to where it should go, and people are spending it where it should be. And then net exports. Those are the two things that are really being worked on right now. And that's a 4-point plan out of GDP. I can assure you he's going to go to consumption and investment next. But you're taking the place right now. You're looking at government spending and imports versus exports. That's how we can solve some of the imbalance and some of the worry right now.
I mean, your consumption and investing, remember back golly, it's too much. Was this executive order land or was this campaign land? The discussion about a sovereign wealth fund for the United States, that may be your investing piece as we talk about it moving forward.
When you think about Greenland and all these things.
Oh, yeah. Hold that thought. Let's get to the end of this. It's almost to the end. Mm-hmm. All of this approach that we're talking about, or Tanvi Ratna's talking about in her ex-post, not without risk. If domestic supply chains cannot catch up, or if global retaliation kicks in, inflation could rise again. If that happens, the Fed may be forced to raise rates, which would blow a hole in the low-yield plan. That's the tightrope that the administration has to walk. Why impose tariffs before building out the capacity to replace imports? You have to assume that tariffs are the end goal. They're not. We're already seeing that. Tariffs were not the end goal. Yes, it's nice. The 10% tariffs across the board, that's going to generate some revenue for the United States of America. And it's not an undue amount. We'll probably be paying that kind of a tariff with, incoming, outgoing, whatever. Tariffs were not the end goal. Even though Donald Trump talked about the greatest economy ever, richest nation in the world, William McKinley, all this good stuff, that was nothing but long-term tariffs, and expect the rest of the world to just be like, okay, we'll pay forever. Forever and ever we'll pay. Oh, that's not how it works. It was, it is, it always has been a tool in the toolbox. But you have to show a willingness to use the tool. Right? Having a gun is not a way of defending your home in the event of an intruder. Having a gun. Being willing to pull the trigger is how you defend your home in the event of an intruder. Having the tools in the toolbox to reset the global economy, to reset the mess that the United States in, having the tool in your toolbox or tools to fix it, but not being willing to use them, doesn't change the problem. You got to be willing to use them. And so that's why Trump has flexed on these tariffs. And what has it yielded? 75 countries across the world lining up saying, hey, let's work something out on this. Who's the only one that hasn't? Ain't but one. Well, maybe a couple. But it's China. And China is saying, no, we're just as big, we're just as bad, and you're not going to scare us into this. And maybe one of the scary things about China is the whole national pride deal. Like, we're not going to be insulted on the national stage. Will pride be the death? Or will that be the strength that keeps China going? Grant Callen joins us next. This segment of Mornings with Richard Cross is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Want to know what's happening in Mississippi politics?
Yes.
You're in the right place. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
10.
So good to be with you on this Thursday morning, the 10th of April. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Got a couple of things that are coming up a little bit later today that we quickly need to let you know about. Middays with Gerard Gibbert and Sports Talk Mississippi will be at the Columbus Convention and Visitors Bureau later today for the annual Catfish in the Alley event that features Southern flavor, the blues, and history. So be sure to catch both Middays with Gerard Gibbert and Sports Talk Mississippi at the Columbus Convention and Visitors Bureau, 10 to 1 for Gerard, 3 to 6 this afternoon. Catfish in the Alley. It is my pleasure to welcome in our first guest this morning. His name is Grant Callen. Grant is the founder and CEO of Empower Mississippi. We've got a lot to get to. I know that many of you, because he's been on this program and others at SuperTalk for a long time, know Grant already or know Grant's story already. I am just getting to know Grant. We had a really good visit, or I thought it was a really good visit a couple of weeks ago on a podcast that he hosts called it's the Empower Mississippi podcast. And I really appreciated the invitation. I want to say that publicly, Grant, and had a really good time visiting with you. How are you?
I'm great. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Let's start at the very beginning. You founded Empower Mississippi. What is the goal? What is this organization, this nonprofit? What's the goal with Empower Mississippi?
Yeah, we're 11 years in, and the mission is pretty simple. We want to create and, in some cases, continue the progress of making Mississippi a state where everyone can rise. So we think about, what are the things that stand in the way of people building a great life here in Mississippi? And what are those quality of life things that it takes to have a great life here? And so we think about that in terms of kind of our three pillars. These are not the only things that matter, but they're kind of three big areas that if you can get these right, they go a long way to making sure this is a great place for everybody. And those three pillars are education, work, and justice. So it's kind of what I say what I want for my kids is I want my kids to get a great education so they can find meaningful work and stay out of the justice system. And, if people end up behind bars, as many in Mississippi have and other places, we want to be a place where there's a path for you to rebuild your life.
It's hard to argue with those pillars. Let's start with education, because that has been very much a conversation, and you want to talk about passion. When people start talking about education, especially K-12 education in the state of Mississippi, you have significant opinions. Sometimes I wonder if my opinion being right gets in the way of what's best for children. The conversation is about school choice. Or at least that's the biggest conversation that's existing right now. But when we focus so much on school choice, we sometimes lose sight of the fact that there are some things that have happened that are very, very good for Mississippi and are happening in public schools and in private schools. And J.D. Vance even tweeted about that earlier this week, pointing to the success in Mississippi with some of the reading improvement. Now, there are others that will push back on that and say, no, it's not what the numbers say they are. But most everybody agrees that there has been significant progress in the education system in the state of Mississippi in recent years.
Yeah, that's right. And look, I am proud of the progress. We have seen, particularly in literacy, and I think largely because of the Literacy-Based Promotion Act of 2013, we've seen substantial growth in the number of kids that are reading on grade level, and that's huge. But let's step back a little bit. The goal for us, it's bigger than school choice. The goal is we want every child to have access to a great education. And in many parts of the state, parents do have access to a great education. We have some great public schools that are serving kids, where kids are thriving. They love what they're getting. They're being prepared for kind of what's next, whether that's college or career. Our problem is not that we don't have great public schools. Our problem is we don't have access to great education in every community. And sometimes even a highly rated public school that by all accounts is world class is not meeting the needs of every child. And so our position is that in every community, in every corner of the state, parents need options because only parents know their kids as well as they do. There's nobody else that can substitute for what parents know about their kids. And you're a dad, I'm a dad. Like, I can tell you in ways that nobody else can today, tomorrow, next week, whether my kids are thriving, whether they're getting what they need, or whether we need to make a change in their educational setting. And every parent is that way. They know whether their kids are thriving or not. The problem is when a parent decides for whatever reason, because it's a underperforming public school or a high-performing public school, but if a parent decides my kid is not thriving, I've got to make a change. You don't have a lot of options in Mississippi. You have very few.
You said one of the issues is that not every student is being served. That's a worthy goal. Is it a reasonable goal, though? I've had conversations with superintendents that say, look, at the top end, we are performing exceptionally well. We've got national merit semifinalists and national merit finalists and high ACT and SAT scorers and lots of scholarships and lots of AP programs. But we're trying to reach those kids also that are struggling. And sometimes that's because of language barrier, because of the diversity of our communities. And sometimes that's because of home situations. Is there a scenario where you can actually reach every child?
Of course not. And perfection is not the goal, but let's don't let perfection be the enemy of good. And even after all of our impressive literacy gains, when you look at the numbers, less than half the kids in the state are reading on grade level. So half the kids are not reading on grade level in our public school system.
That's 1 out of 2.
One out of 2.
If you're in 5th grade, you are not reading at a 5th grade level.
1 out of 2 kids are not reading on grade level. That's correct. And I'm not saying we don't you heard me. I'm celebrating the progress. I think the Mississippi Miracle is real, and I'm thrilled to see the scores that are being championed across the country that Mississippi has made significant gains. But we don't have to rest on our laurels and say we've done enough. To me, the beauty of school choice, the secret sauce of school choice is it forces everybody to be radically focused on the individual needs of kids, making sure kids get what they need. That doesn't mean they're all going to get it, but it does mean we have a better shot of more kids getting what they need. And the beauty is we don't have to choose to support choice or be against public schools. Choice is a great lifter, a great equalizer that has been demonstrated in a lot of other states and in reams of peer-reviewed research to help the kids who need it and the public school system that they may be opting out of or opting into a different school within. So it's not us versus them. Let's help individual kids who are falling behind. And in doing that, I'm convinced there's a lot of data to show that public schools are going to continue to rise even faster.
There was very much a debate in the legislature about school choice, but I feel like there were two sides to the debate. There was universal school choice, where parents have the ability to send their kids to any school, and then there was also district-to-district choice that was talked about. So within the public school system, if you are in a failing district and there is an opportunity where you can handle getting your kid to a better school district, then you have that option. At Empower Mississippi and with your leadership, is there one of those two that you support, or is that perfection versus good like you were talking about a second ago?
Oh, we support all of that. Every state around us now, Louisiana, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Alabama all have what you first mentioned as universal private choice, where any kid in the state can use public dollars to enroll in a private school if their needs are not being met. But let's be clear, really, honestly, this legislative session, universal was never on the table. There was not a universal school choice bill introduced. There were some very important but incremental steps towards giving parents more choice. But you mentioned kind of two buckets. I would say there are really three. There is private choice, there is public school choice, district choice, which you mentioned, and there's charter school choice. And we supported bills that would have accomplished all three this year. None of those bills were our bills, but they were bills that we supported and championed and were excited about. And I think we made some important progress this year. It was just disappointing to see they didn't get further through the process.
When we come back, I would like for you to address something that we regularly get messages about, and that's the people that say this whole Mississippi Miracle thing is just fun with numbers. It's a joke. It's not actually a thing. Why is it that people are saying that? I'll give you a chance to answer that question when we come back. More with Grant Callen, founder and CEO of Empower Mississippi. This is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Welcome to the show.
Substitution, mass confusion, clouds inside your head.
Today on In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear an interview with Dr. William Lewis, who served many years as president of Pearl River Community College. In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, presented by Superior Catfish. Remember, there's catfish, then there's Superior Catfish. It's U.S. farm-raised catfish that has homegrown flavor. Ask for it by name at your favorite store or restaurant, and go to superiorcatfish.com for more information. Grant Callen is my guest, founder and CEO at Empower Mississippi. So I laid it out before the break. We hear on an almost daily basis if the term Mississippi Miracle comes up or the advancements in reading statistics in Mississippi come up or are celebrated. There are people who go, oh, no, that's just fun with numbers. That's bunk. That's not actually going on. Why is it that people say that?
I don't know. I think it is probably people who either maybe their experience with where their kids are at is not working well for them, or it could be that they're just looking at the whole picture and saying we haven't arrived. There's more work to be done. But for the most part, I don't take a lot of – I would disregard that. Educators, people who have spent their life in education policy, recognize that the nation's report card, which is NAEP, National Assessment of Education Progress, is widely seen as a trusted, credible indicator of student progress. And it is NAEP that we have seen so many advances in, particularly fourth grade reading, and the progress is real. Not just in whole progress, but when you look at particularly our African American students have seen some of the most growth in any state in the nation. And their outcomes are they've passed the national average, and they're beginning to be some of the greatest outcomes in the nation. So there is real progress that is worthy of celebration. And I think we do a disservice to these kids that have worked hard, these families that are supporting them, teachers who are the ones standing in front of them every day trying to help create better outcomes for kids. We do a disservice if we can't celebrate progress along the way, even while recognizing there's more work to be done.
One concern that I have, and it's something that we've talked about with education leaders as we visited on the show, is the focus on testing outcomes versus teaching for learning.
Yeah, and I think that's real. I think 15 or so years ago, Mississippi moved to an accountability system, this A through F accountability system that is, in my mind, it's a bit too dependent on test scores instead of looking at the whole picture of what goes into student success. And I think it was needed. It was kind of a needed shift in accountability. But, as happens sometimes in public policy, the pendulum swings too far. And so what it has done, in my view, is it has crowded out other things, other subject areas, other important factors in a kid's education that are not easy to measure on a test. And so there's a lot of things that we don't include in this accountability model that should. One of the factors that we'd like to see added to the accountability model is parent satisfaction. Do parents feel like their kids are thriving in their school? That's a critically important factor in private schools that determine whether parents stay. Are they satisfied? Do they feel like their kids are getting what they need? Some states include that in the way they assess the performance of public schools. But the problem is, by being so dependent on test scores, and particularly growth scores, not proficiency, you have a situation where you have today, which is, I think we have 139 school districts, and literally there's only 3 in the entire state that are rated D or F. Everybody else is an A, B, or C. And while we have made great progress, we're not going to continue to make great progress if everybody gets a trophy, everybody's A, B, or C, without regard for sort of where those kids really are. So I think there's work to be done to improve that system.
Last thing, we've only got a minute and a half left, and certainly want to continue this conversation. When you hear the argument that private school choice as part of the school choice conversation is nothing more than modern-day segregation in the state of Mississippi, how do you respond to that?
Man, I just think that is that's somebody who doesn't really have a good argument for how do we talk about what's going on. So in many parts of the state, our public schools are already segregated, not by mandate, but because our neighborhoods are often segregated. Now, there are great outliers, and I would say Clinton is a tremendous outlier where they have a high-performing school, great diversity. There's a lot of diversity in Madison. But what we're talking about is helping make sure kids can find a setting that works for them, whether they are white kids, black kids, Asian, it doesn't matter. We want all kids to have an opportunity to rise. And choice has demonstrated that it actually increases diversity, not decreases it.
Grant, we unfortunately have got to leave it there for today. I hope we can continue the conversation soon.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Richard.
Grant Callen, founder and CEO of Empower Mississippi. 8 o'clock hour is coming up. We'll start things off with former Congressman Gregg Harper. We'll talk with him on some of his impressions of what is happening in Washington, D.C. with this tariff conversation. We're back right after this.
What's happening across your state? Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Oh, my sweet Carolina, I don't guess I'll ever find another woman.
For spending more time in the kitchen and more time around the table, pork makes it possible with thousands of delicious dishes from around the world. 100% real pork, brought to you by America's pig farmers. Discover new flavors at pork.org/realpork. Who doesn't like pork? Thanks for being with us this morning. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Lance in the studio. I'm glad to be back with you this morning. And pleased to welcome our next guest to the conversation. That is former U.S. Congressman representing the 3rd District in the state of Mississippi, Gregg Harper. He is coming to us from his library. A lot of books. How many of those have you actually read that are behind you? It looks like some legal code back there.
No, I've colored in every one of them. So, I mean, there's and Lance reminded me that just above my head on the green set right there, that's your autobiography going right there. It's only about 12 volumes so far.
Yeah, the title of the book is I Want to Talk About Me. Greg, really appreciate your time. Always a pleasure to visit with you. This is a very interesting, fascinating, for some scary time in the United States, and it has a lot to do with where we are economically and what's going on. This tariff conversation is it's one that is changing not by the day but by the hour, maybe even by the minute. Let's start big picture with tariffs. To me, there's lots and lots of confusion about what all of this conversation is about, why it is that President Trump is using tariffs, what his overall goal is. It from your perspective, from someone who has sat in that Capitol and has debated what's best economically for the United States, who recognizes the significant issue that we've got with the debt, with the national deficit. Where are we right now from your perspective?
Richard, I can't keep up with all of it. It's really dizzying when you see what's going on. And look, to his credit, he's only doing what he said he was going to do. Yeah. But when we talk about tariffs, I mean, simply just a tax on imports. He's really the first president I remember for me as an adult that took a serious look country by country at what's going on with our trade relations. And let's look, even if you're a big critic of President Trump, and he has many out there that just want to rant and rave and offer no solution, but only criticism. If you look at it, we've been much, much more generous to other countries than they've been to us. And that's just a fact. So it's not just tariffs. It's also trade restrictions and other barriers that are in there that maybe don't have a figure like a tariff might have. But remember, when he started this, they said the world would end. We'd go into the big stock market crash. And it did take a dive for a little bit. But how do you then turn around and say what happened yesterday? And I'll just give one example. If you remember when in Trump's first term, the folks, primarily State Department related folks, said if you move the embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, there will be another world war. Nothing happened except he did what every president said they would do in their terms and never did. And so he's not afraid to take on a chance. And I just think that. I mean, we scratch our heads every day because he's doing things that the so-called experts would say, maybe you shouldn't be doing that. Right. But look at where we are. Not only has he now got really almost every country coming to the table now to talk, saying we want a deal. Brilliantly, he sort of isolated China, communist China, in the process. So this is something that you just have to kind of smile at what he's doing because, look, China's been at war with us. We just don't know it. And this is a way that we can sort of isolate them and take that advantage. So there's going to be a lot of things that are going to happen. He's not only isolating communist China, but he's got to figure out a way, too, that he protects Taiwan. The last thing you want to do with Taiwan is require them to be pushed towards communist China. And so there's so many plots and subplots going on. That it's really difficult to look at.
I want to go down the China road with you in just a second, but let's press pause on that because you said something. You referenced the stock market, and to me there is disingenuousness on both sides of the aisle as it pertains to the stock market. You had Democrats as the stock market was falling 20%, going, "See, this is blowing up the market, and we're killing people's retirement funds," but they didn't want to recognize necessarily yesterday when the stock market had a huge rebound. And then on the other side of things, you had Republicans when the stock market was falling saying, "Oh, there's nothing to see here. It's part of the process. It'll be okay. Don't worry about it." But then wanted to champion yesterday the bounce back of the stock market. Is that, am I onto something there in terms of like, we're just using it for political rhetoric and perhaps maybe the stock market shouldn't be the only barometer of success or failure in this larger conversation?
Well, you certainly want to claim credit for everything that's successful, right? I mean, that's human nature. I think that's and part
you want
to
point blame for anything that looks like it might be a failure of the opposite side.
Right. And look, and most people that and I'm certainly no financial expert, but people that invest in stock market, mutual funds, whatever, they do it typically for the long term. There are those they're trading daily and doing things that's a lot more, I'm sure, disruptive for them in that process. But remember, we're carrying this thing called debt, a lot of debt, and it has to be financed. And my understanding is when there's disruption in the stock market, that kind of forces investments into the bond market, which is much better when you come into, say, this summer or later in the year, where you have to refinance some of that debt that we're carrying. So he may be smarter than all of us when all is said and done. So I think that we'll see how it plays out. But I think you just can't worry about the stock market up and down. We know it's going to go up and down. But those on Wall Street would not want to disrupt trade. They don't want to have a trade war. Well, we've got to do what's for the best interest of the country. And look, you know how it is in the media. If you're against a position, then you're going to show these little vignettes, these little stories about how it hurts this person or it hurts this one thing. But overall, for the country, I think it's an interesting ride, I'll have to say, but I do believe we're going to be okay at the end of the day. But look, I remember when Trump came in, I don't know that anybody really thought he was going to win in 2016. And so his team that he had together wasn't maybe up to the speed that they needed to be when he started. And then so many other things happened. So from the country standpoint, although I was very disappointed when Biden won in 2020, I think it's the best thing that ever happened to the country. He had time to reflect on it, think about it, and he has put together, I think, the best cabinet I've seen in my lifetime. And they are sharp. They know what they're doing. A couple of them I might not have picked, but overall, I would say it's fun to watch. And I think look, he hadn't even been in office 3 months. Right. This term, and and nobody can keep up with what he's doing.
Yeah. Visiting with former U.S. Congressman Gregg Harper. He represented the 3rd District in Mississippi. Let's go back to the China conversation that you brought up a second ago. And you said China has been at war with the United States, whether we recognize it or not, whether we know it or not. That's on a lot of different fronts, right? I mean, it's on the technology front, it's on the education front, it is on the building their infrastructure and their influence throughout the world front, but it's also theft, right? I mean, and intellectual property is at the top of the list. You make a product in the United States and you go through the patent process and you invest all that you need to invest, and you look up and 6 months later, sometimes even less, China has stolen that intellectual property, and they are creating it with underpaid labor at smaller cost and then distributing it around the world. Is there any way to combat that? Is that part of what's going on here?
Well, you certainly, there are a lot of things that you can try, but they take forever. How do you protect your property? Because sometimes if you decide you want to do business in that market with Communist China, they're going to get your stuff and they're going to have it. And so think of the money that Communist China saves, because they don't have to spend any money on research and development. Their R&D budget is nothing because they just steal it. And it's been going on forever. And it's not just the theft of intellectual property, which you can put in barriers, but if you go to, international courts, it takes years. And by that time, the damage is already done to your company. But no worse conduct that we can put a finger on than what they did during the Wuhan virus. I'm sorry, COVID-19 virus. They denied that it was a lab leak. They covered it up. They knew this was going on months before the rest of the world did, and they bought up all the protective issues and items that we needed.
Hold that thought just for a second. We'll come back to that and to the point that we were making a second ago. In some cases, the United States is funding some of the research and development that is happening in China. We're back with Congressman Gregg Harper right after this.
From the White House to your hometown, this is where you find out what's happening. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Continuing our conversation with Congressman Gregg Harper. Former Congressman Gregg Harper represented the 3rd District of the state of Mississippi. This is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Glad to have you along. And a reminder, you can always join the conversation on the C Spire text line. If you're looking for game-changing technology, then you need C Spire on your team. 5G wireless, fiber home internet, and business IT solutions built as tough as you. Learn more at cspire.com. C-Spire, inspired by you. Greg, we were talking about China and some of the things you were specifically talking about COVID and the Wuhan lab and all that went into that. And, it's funny. A lot of the things that many people were saying was going on, but elected officials were not willing to say publicly is now being said publicly with regard to the fact that, it wasn't a leak. It was intentional. Yes, we funded much of that gain-of-function research that was happening in the Wuhan lab. Yeah, the relationship with China really is a complicated one, and it feels like that complicated relationship right now is closer to coming to a head than at any point in the last couple of decades.
Oh, no doubt, and it's much more public, and China will, and I can't say China without saying communist China, because until their people are free, I'm just going to have to refer to them that way. But look, they're saying, even yesterday, I can't even say their president, their emperor, their whatever he has said, we're in it to the end, and so it's definitely escalating. We have more cards than they have. They need our markets. Now, we may do without some things for a little while if it escalates far enough, and that could be a problem. But we have to look at this. We have we have the greatest country in the history of the world. Hands down, not even close. But they and other communist countries have tried to utilize that openness that we have. Look no further than the research in our universities across the country. So many of those have been Chinese nationals that have come in and gotten access to information, much of what we don't know. And of course, we've also got the most visible part right now is probably the most important real estate in the country, which is in the whole world, is Taiwan. You look at that. You look at the fact that they have bought hundreds and hundreds of thousands of acres, many near military bases in our country. They are a real national security threat to us, and they cannot be trusted in their current form of government. Unlike probably the people, the regular citizens in China would probably love to live in something that we have, but it is a situation where Trump, I think, is prepared to do whatever. But if we can get all the other countries to the table on trade negotiations and issues, and do those things, whether it's the European Union, to wind up with real free trade and get Europe to pivot from buying oil from Russia and buy it from the United States, there are a lot of opportunities to win here and to prevail. But if you can do that and isolate just communist China, I think it puts us in a better situation.
I think what you point out there is fascinating, because in this conversation about tariffs, everybody's talking about trade and opening up markets and, limiting what the United States is. Not so much a trade imbalance, because the United States has the buying power that most countries don't have, but at least a system that allows that to be closer to equal footing. But I think there are more layers to this than are really being talked about publicly. And you kind of allude to that a second ago when you talk about, where other countries are buying their energy, who they are aligning with. There's a story this morning that's out that talks about the fact that China is reaching out to others. It's almost like they're trying to rally support in the way that the United States has been doing, with all the countries kind of lining up to say, hey, let's work out a deal.
Yeah. And look, remember, China's had a long history of doing the Belt and Road Initiative, where they've gone into smaller countries, whether it's in South America or Central America or other places in Asia, and they would say, we'll build this road for you, we'll do these things for you, modernize you, but then it's a debt trap. They can't get out of that. But their goal here is world domination. And thank goodness, look at what we've been able to do already on backing away control of the ports on the Panama Canal.
Right.
So these are things that it's not just, it's like the old board game we used to play as kids, Risk. where it was the world domination, you try to take over the world.
Right.
There's no doubt that that's what their motivation is. And this is the first time we've really done a real look at, and I think it really is a great reset on where we are. So, and don't forget, China has been the main source of the fentanyl problem in this country, which has had a devastating effect on so many people and is still there. But look, who would have ever thought in the short period of time that Trump could have done what he's done on the border to turn that around?
I mean, it's gone to basically zero in terms of illegal crossings in the last 100 days. There is, to me, an issue that hits far closer to home, because some of this can almost kind of feel abstract because it's what's happening in Washington, D.C., it's what's happening in Beijing, it's what's happening on Wall Street, and yet we have this need sometimes to focus on, but what does it mean right here in Mississippi? And to me, the farmer, and I'm using that term very generally, is the group that you go to the top of the list of in terms of effect on them. China buys more of our grain than any other country in the world, and if China says we're not going to keep buying your soybeans or your cottonseed or whatever it is, that stands to hurt farmers in Mississippi, and we know that that's a very real struggle that already is going on with input prices compared to what they're getting in terms of sale prices. How concerning is that piece of this conversation for you?
Yeah, it's certainly very concerning. I'm one generation removed from the family farm in Lackey, Mississippi, outside Aberdeen. And it's a real issue. And I certainly appreciate the great job that Andy Gibson's done as our ag commissioner. And so look, we trade with folks all over the world. We're a major trading partner on ag with Taiwan, for example, that we've mentioned several times today. So yes, it's a concern, but the fact that we went with the tariffs for just a minute, then now we've got a 90-day pause on that. And with China is the only one we're going after. Yes, there could be some temporary pain, but I think at the end of the day, our market options are so strong, whether it's in the country or whether it's international imports. I think our Mississippi farmers are probably the most patriotic people that we'll ever find. And so I think they're in it for the long haul, and we can't make it without them.
You said that we put those tariffs in place for a minute and have now backed off. I used the analogy earlier. It's like you've got a toolbox and there are tools in there, and you've got a problem that you need to fix, and you've got the tools to fix those problems, but if the tools just stay in the toolbox, the problem doesn't fix itself. Did Trump putting these in place only to back away from them for a negotiating window, was that the proof the rest of the world need that not only do they have the tools, but they are willing to use the tools to fix the problem?
Yeah, absolutely. And these tools will be painful to these other countries if they don't come to the table and negotiate. And look, at the end of the day, we're going to have much fairer trade than we've had in the past and a much more level playing field. I mean, I've got a lot of friends that they call themselves free traders. Well, you can't be for free trade if one side's got the upper hand, and really we have been infinitely more generous on these things and just kind of let them go. And it's certainly trade is critical for our state and our opportunities that are there, but we know for Mississippi, was NAFTA a good thing? No, probably not. And then the second worst thing that we probably did was letting China into the World Trade Organization. So these things, if you go back and look in that trade history over the 90s and beyond, it's kind of put us in a situation that we're having to do this reset. And so, I mean, I'm so impressed with what the president's done and is doing on so many issues, and I certainly have a high level of trust that his folks know what they're doing.
Last thing for you. We've got a minute left. There have been some flashpoints in history where an opponent of the United States blinked, a communist opponent. We saw it with the Cuban Missile Crisis between JFK and Nikita Khrushchev. Russia and that moment in history blinked. Mikhail Gorbachev blinked to a certain degree when the Berlin Wall came down, and you heard Mr. Gorbachev tear down that wall. Will China blink this time?
I don't know, but they're going to probably be wide-eyed and lose some sleep over this, because what we're going to do is I think we'll probably have a better relationship with Russia on trade issues when this is said and done, and kind of break that Russia-China dating mode that they've been in for a little while. So at some point, China will realize they need us more than we need them, even though we buy so many products from them.
Thank you for your time. We're up against a break. Appreciate it so much.
Thanks, Richard. Good to talk to you.
Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Good to be with you on this Thursday morning, the 10th day of the month of April. Got, let's see here, week 4 of SEC baseball play begins. Conference play begins tonight. You got a couple of games. None of our teams in Mississippi get started until tomorrow. Mississippi State on the road in Tuscaloosa taking on Alabama. Ole Miss hosting number 5 Tennessee this weekend. Southern Miss is on the road this weekend. They are in San Marcos, Texas, taking on Texas State in a 3-game series. You have the start of the Masters. You have Easter 2 weekends away. No, next weekend. Easter is a week from Sunday, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And it is midway point. After the end of the weekend for SEC, there'll be 15 games in with 15 to go. So we're at week 5, I believe. Is
that right?
Yeah. Everybody's got 12 games under the belt. And we will have game 13, 14, and 15 this weekend.
Yeah. So I had the right numbers with the wrong weeks in my head. So this is week 5. This when we get to Sunday afternoon, be halfway through the SEC baseball season. Spring is absolutely up on us 100%. It's kind of nice. I feel like we've had an actual spring this year. There are years where it goes from cold to hot in a hurry. We see that in the fall as well, where it goes from hot to cold in a hurry. But we've had a pretty good run of, some days where it's in the 80s, but some days where it's in the 60s. Probably could do without the 50s at this point, but
they're nice. It's
the pollen is starting to subside. You have a dusting. You do not have a flood of pollen anymore. I don't know what that word is that I just made up.
It's a new one. It's going to be in the autobiography.
Following.
Yeah. Hey, I will say this: one thing I've learned a little bit about when you have a true spring, it seems like your irises you'll get more stalks and blooms off an iris a lot of times. So if it's not a great spring, either way, it seems to affect the iris way more than others.
The azaleas are spectacular this year. Starting to see the tulips pop. If you're a tulip person.
Roses look great right now.
Roses look good. Snowballs look good.
Snowballs, I love it.
You know what I'm talking about, right? The
hydrangea?
No, not the hydrangea. Hydrangea are just though you do have white blooms, those are the colored blooms, and those are about to start. Most places they haven't popped yet, but the snowball trees, they look like they've got the big snowballs on them.
We need to have you on.
They look
as
a lot
guest.
like hydrangea.
Yeah, we need to have you on as a guest on Garden Mama on a Saturday morning one day.
Do we now?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, because you know the business a bit.
I'm going to stay out of Garden Mama's lane. She knows what she's talking about, and I'm the guy that occasionally texts the show. I'm like, hey, in fact, I asked about pruning hydrangea not too terribly long ago.
Yeah, that was you. Okay, cool. I don't have his number.
That was me. I mean, I'm sure somebody asks about that on a weekly basis this time of year, but
most of the time, we'll get a good little, what do you do with these hydrangeas? But thank you for the participation.
Yeah.
Even Joel, Anand, Sami, and Natasha listen to us every Saturday. They're up in D.C., so we greatly appreciate all the listeners out there.
There you go. What is this? Derek in Greenwood sends us a picture. See, now Garden Mama would immediately diagnose that. I don't know what I'm looking at. Oh, those are your roses.
Knockouts,
I'm sorry.
Those are knockout roses. They're looking good, man. I love the wildness of the bush too. It's just I let one go as tall. I let it get up. It's about 6.5, 7 feet tall, and I'm going to kind of contour it around. Yeah, but it's taken up. It's in a beautiful spot, getting a lot of sun, but you can tell this baby is just taking off.
We are about to. By the way, this is way off the reservation. I recognize that. Jane has always wanted some climbing plants. When we had a garage, we don't have a garage anymore, but when we did, she wanted, the ivy that kind of climbs around and wraps the garage along the edges, and never done that. We had a chimney on the back of the house, and we're going to try and do some climbing roses. But I said I wanted roses without thorns. Thorns, yeah. I don't want the stickers. And so apparently we have discovered a variety that does just that. So we'll see how it turns out. Have no fear, Adam Schiff is on the case, and what makes us feel more comfortable and confident in a good, solid, clean outcome than when Adam Schiff is on the case. The senator from California, well, I'll just let you listen in.
How concerned are you with this market fluctuation, and are you concerned that there could be members of the White House that are benefiting from it?
Absolutely. I'm writing to the White House to demand who knew in advance that the president was going to once again flip-flop on tariffs, and are people cashing in? There is just all too much opportunity for people in the White House and the administration to be insider trading, and you can't put it past them for a minute. So we're going to try to find out.
There's a good chance that
that's Rich coming from an elected official in Congress. Lance, this is your soapbox. There is no group of people on planet Earth who benefit more from non-public information than elected members of Congress.
Amen.
Right? And you can see it in their net worth valuations all the time.
Well, and Obama gets a nice dividend from the Affordable Care Act every year, and has gotten one. Read something the other day. It was like $10 million he gets as a kickback annually, for ramrodding through the non-Affordable Care Act.
I will say, if you chose not to take advantage of where the market was, when it was at 30, what did it get down to 36,000 for the Dow?
Mm-hmm.
And look, there could be a million reasons why you didn't take advantage. One, you didn't know how to take advantage. Two, you didn't have cash sitting around. You don't have a financial advisor that you could call and say, hey, let's do this, let's move this. There was an opportunity, though, if you just opened your eyes. Like, you didn't have to have inside information to go, the stock market is at 36,000. It's not going to stay there. I have a small amount of money or I have a large amount of money. I need to get it in the market right now. And if you did, you came darn near close to doubling your money yesterday with the rise in the market overall. You certainly had a very significant day. And guess what? That didn't take inside information. That took just paying attention. If the market's going to come back, I don't know if it's going to come back tomorrow or next week or next month or 6 months from now, but history tells us that the stock market is going to come back. Now, some people want to time the bottom of the market. You have said a million times you can't time the market, and anybody with, outside of the day trader community who constantly tries to time the market recognizes that investing is a long-term play, and if you see opportunity, you take that, but then you are willing to wait out the opportunity, on and on and on. Message on the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. Imagine if Obama had tweeted it's a good time to buy 30 minutes before reversing course on tariffs. There would be a freak out from the right. You're probably right about that. Is it no longer inside information if the president says buy? Just like, hey, just letting everybody know. Probably a good time to buy.
That's an interesting point, too, right there. I mean, like, if the press comes out and said, hey, we're about to do this, everybody buy. Is that, as long as I guess he didn't profit before he let the info out, is that insider information? I mean, can he be prosecuted for that?
Thomas says MAGA said 98% of people don't own stocks, Richard.
Most of them own mutual funds.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, do you consider your retirement, your 401k, to be stocks? I mean, maybe not specifically, but there's a stock component within kind of that diversified makeup of your retirement account.
I mean, as somebody that did it a bit, when I first started, you'd see a lot more people coming in with blue chips and a blue chip type of stock portfolio. Mm-hmm. Same with individual bonds that you'd build or that were built into a maturing ladder. You don't see that near as much anymore, especially as I was coming out of the markets as a professional, where it shifted more to third-party managers, mutual fund type of programs, and the same with bonds. You didn't see near as many singles. Well, I mean, blocks of you sell bonds in blocks of fives, individual bonds. So it was definitely was shifting greatly toward the managed platforms as I was exiting.
Probably more than anything, you had people who said, I don't know which stocks are going to do well.
There's
I've got just a little bit of cash here on the side, whether it's like to go into a Robinhood account or to call a financial advisor, or you're sophisticated enough that you invest on your own. You probably said, let me just pour some money into some index funds so that I can reflect the entire market or the entire S&P 500. C-Spire text line, the junior senator from California probably should take a look at Speaker Emerita Pelosi's transactions when he was her colleague in the House while he's on the case. Yeah, that was kind of the point of the whole thing. This, we need to take a look at insider trading, is awfully rich coming from the senator, the junior senator, as it was said, from California, Adam Schiff. Fast 3 hours. We'll wrap it up with you coming up next.
From the Venable.
Good morning, everybody. Time to wake up.
Time to shine!
Start your day right. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
The Masters is the golf tournament that has the broadest appeal because of the history, because it's the same course every year, because of the beauty, all of those things that go in. So I'll give you a quick very early Masters leaderboard update. Zach Johnson, former champion, 2 under par through 6 holes. Chris Kirk, 2 under par through 6. Noah Kent, an amateur that is now at the University of Florida. He was runner-up in the U.S. Amateur last year, and so received an invite to play at Augusta. All right, he's 2 under par. And then Aaron Ray, 2 under par as well.
Was it 10, 11, and 12? Isn't that the toughest 3 holes on the course?
11, 12, 13 is Amen Corner.
Yeah. But 10, 11, and 12, I think, are the hardest rated. So if you can get around those 3 and you're still under par, you got a shot.
Yeah, nobody has gotten there yet. But, 10 is a difficult green to hit into. 11 is certainly a challenge, and then 12 is, one of the 3 or 4 most, maybe one of the 2 most famous par 3s in the world. You've got the Island Green at Sawgrass, and you got 12 at Augusta.
11 gets me because it's a par 4, and it's like 520 yard par 4. I mean, that'll
one of the
stretch
things,
it out a little bit.
Well, it's one of the things that's so crazy. So there are only 2 sets of tees at Augusta. Most golf courses, they've got, the champions tees, and then you've got kind of the regular person tees, and then you've got the senior tees, and you have women's tees, and sometimes you got a junior. You might have 4, 5, even 6 different sets of tee boxes, so you can play the course at different yardages based on your skill level. Augusta has 2 sets of tees. They have the tournament tees, or the championship tees, and then they have member tees. And that's it.
Yeah, Humbling 1 and Humbling 2. That's the ones they have.
The difference in the two is staggering.
Lengthwise and look?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, it certainly changes the look of the golf course, but it just in sheer length.
It stretches it out.
18, for example, where you've got to hit through that narrow alley of pine trees into the fairway as it's going uphill toward the 18th green. And it really is a pretty narrow shoot. Members tees, the championship tees are like 70 yards behind the member tees. I mean, it's crazy.
I love playing from the tips as far back as you can go, just because I like the way the course lays out better.
Okay.
Yeah, I might, it's not going to hurt my score too bad because I'm such.
Why wouldn't you do that?
Well, no, I'm just a terrible putter. So, I mean, I can get up and down well. It's just getting on the green and getting it to go in that little bitty hole. I need some Bugs Bunny where you take the putter and just make a little rut. But I can get up and down great, man. That's never been the problem.
Immediate release from the White House this morning. The president chiming in on the Masters. More than just a golf tournament, it's a tradition unlike any other. Every April, Augusta National becomes the center of the golf world, bringing together players and fans across the globe to witness history in the making. From the beauty of its famed second nine through the Georgia Pines to the drama of Amen Corner, the Masters represents excellence, perseverance, and the pursuit of greatness, the very ideals that define our nation. You can read the rest of it if you want to. He wishes everybody good luck. And also congratulated the women who competed in the Augusta National Women's Amateur last weekend. That has become a really big, really cool event.
You think if Trump said, "Hey, G, let's settle this on the golf course. Come on down to Mar-a-Lago. We'll play 36 there, and then we'll go over to China, play your favorite course, and whoever has the best score wins the trade deal." I'd be in on that.
I'm not sure that Xi Jinping would go that
bite
route.
on that.
The House passed a bill yesterday to limit federal district judges' ability to affect Trump administration policies on a national scale. Representative Darrell Issa, Republican from California, authored the No Rogue Rulings Act. It was passed by the House and limits district courts' power to issue United States-wide injunctions, instead forcing them to focus their scope on the parties directly affected in most cases. All but one Republican voted for the bill. All of the Democrats voted against it. 219 to 213 was the vote passage. Issa said he was confident that the bill would pass. He said, "We've got the votes." So it is very, very easy to simply look at this as a Republican issue. I actually think there's a deeper level here. And I'm wondering if this is not something that ultimately would be good for Republicans and Democrats. Obviously, Trump is the focus right now because of these district court rulings that are going against some of his executive orders. But the fact of the matter is, we don't always have a Republican president, and we don't always have a Democrat president. And whoever is president has the opportunity to appoint judges while they are in office. If we're going to end the whole lawfare and weaponizing of the judicial system, is this not a ruling that makes sense regardless of who is in office? It's a tool that the Democrats are using right now that's hurting Republicans, but it just as easily could be the other way around with a Democrat administration. And that seems bad for everybody. I'll leave you with that thought on this Thursday morning. Thanks for being with us. Good to be back with you. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.